Southern Air Cessna 402 ZK VAC. While flying from Stewart Island to Invercargill, New Zealand for Southern Airlines on August 19, 1998, a Cessna 402 ZK VAC carrying 10 people suddenly lost power to both its engines. The group had gone on a fishing trip earlier that day and were having a nice time until that point. Pilot Robin Andrews radioed air traffic control at Invercargill to let them know what had happened, while ordering everyone else on the plane to put on a life jacket. He tried to guide the plane back to dry land to make a crash landing, but it didn't make it that far, leaving him with no other choice than to ditch the aircraft in the frigid Faubourg Strait. Unfortunately, not everyone had a chance to put their life jacket on before the plane hit the water. The aircraft sank fast, and the water was both extremely choppy and cold. At just 48 degrees Fahrenheit, hypothermia was bound to set in fast, and the loss of limb use would soon follow, along with exhaustion. To have any hope of surviving, a life jacket would be necessary. 5 crew members lost their lives, and the 5 survivors were rescued by the Coast Guard and 2 other boats. They were taken to the hospital, where they were treated for hypothermia. 5 days after the wreck, the Royal New Zealand Navy recovered the plane from a depth of 115 feet. Investigators were unable to establish a definitive cause for the accident though. There was no evidence of any major equipment malfunctions, but the plane was also heavily damaged from the force of the current, making it difficult to tell for sure what could have gone wrong. Authorities ultimately concluded that the plane most likely ran out of gas. It made the most sense, especially after discovering that records to track the aircraft's fuel consumption were inaccurate. The plane also lacked a fuel monitoring system, while the pilot mistakenly believed that it was equipped with a low fuel warning system. Unfortunately, the tragedy was preventable, but it prompted the airline to make several important changes in order to keep its pilots and passengers safe, including redesigning its fuel sheet and keeping more accurate records. Missing Dixon Relic. 4,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid of Giza to house the remains of Pharaoh Khufu. Its builders placed a 5-inch piece of cedar inside the structure's tomb, where it remained until 1872. While surveying the pyramid that year, British engineer Wayman Dixon removed it along with the only 2 other known artifacts to ever be taken out of the Queen's chamber. Known as the Dixon artifacts, the collection consists of the cedar, a ball, and a hook. The ball and hook are housed at the British Museum, while the cedar ended up in the possession of Scottish physician Dr. James Grant, a friend of Dixon's who helped carry out the 1872 survey. Records show that Grant's daughter donated the wood to the University of Aberdeen Museums. But it was never classified, and it got lost in the museum's massive collections, which contain hundreds of thousands of items. Nobody could find the cedar, despite an extensive search for it. While reviewing the university's Asia collection in 2019, curatorial assistant Abir Eladni noticed an out-of-place cigar box with an Egyptian motif on it. When she opened it, she was shocked to discover the long-missing cedar, which had been last seen more than 70 years earlier. Another surprise came when carbon dating revealed that the wood predates the pyramid's construction by about 500 years. Scholars don't know the meaning or significance of the cedar fragment, which was once part of a much larger piece of wood that was found in one of the pyramid's deep voids during a robotic survey in 1993. The discovery of the missing relic has enabled researchers to confirm that it was original to the pyramid's construction. And in addition to determining the cedar's use, one of the major questions they've been trying to answer since its rediscovery is whether it was sourced from the center of an ancient tree while the pyramid was being built. Or was it harvested much earlier and prized by its owners due to the scarcity of trees in ancient Egypt? Calendar rock carvings. Along the Colorado-Utah border on the Mesa Verde Plateau, there's an ancient Native American settlement complex called Castle Rock Pueblo. Dating back to pre-Columbian times, the site is most famous for its ancestral Pueblo dwellings, which are carved into the canyon walls. Researchers believe that the ancestral Pueblo people lived at Castle Rock Pueblo for a short period, starting in the 1250s AD, and they left no later than 1274 AD. The society represented one of the most advanced cultures of its time in North America, and researchers are still learning a lot about the ancestral Pueblo group and what their lives were like. Until recently, Polish archaeologist Radosław Palonka thought experts had seen everything there was to see within the complex. But she learned otherwise when local elders suggested looking in higher parts of the canyon that are more difficult to access. Palonka took the advice, and her team found a series of spiral-shaped petroglyphs and other previously unknown rock carvings. Some were discovered as high as 2,625 feet above the cliff dwellings, with the largest spiral petroglyphs measuring 3 feet in diameter. The team believes that these carvings were used for making astronomical observations and for determining certain important dates, including the summer and winter solstices and the fall and spring equinoxes. In a statement, Palonka noted that the newly discovered artwork proves that researchers previously underestimated the size of the population that lived at Castle Rock Pueblo during its heyday, as well as the complexity of the group's religious rituals. She hopes that the area contains more secrets that are waiting to be discovered, which will help people learn more about the ancestral Pueblo people. Israel's oldest Jesus portrait. Located in Israel's Negev desert, the ancient village of Shifta dates to at least as far back as the 1st century AD. Its Christian ruins, however, are believed to date back between the 4th and 6th centuries AD. The settlement experienced a decline between the 6th and 9th centuries during the Islamic period, after which it was abandoned and forgotten until its rediscovery during the 19th century. Shifta is home to Israel's earliest known depiction of Jesus Christ. Discovered in 2017, the heavily eroded painting is barely discernible to the naked eye. Experts believe that the 1,500-year-old artwork was a painting of Jesus' baptism in the Jordan River. Art historian Emma Mayenfana was visiting the site on a hot day when she sat in the shade beneath the partially intact roof of the village's baptistery. And when she looked up, she noticed Jesus' eyes. In a study, researchers described the image as a very young Jesus with short, curly hair, a prolonged face, an elongated nose, and large eyes. These features are characteristic of a 6th century rendition of the Lord's likeness. The painting doesn't reflect what Jesus actually looked like. It's more representative of how he was seen in the collective conscience at the time. Following the portrait's discovery, Mayenfana told Live Science that her team would now focus on recovering and conserving as much of the painting as possible. Ghost footprints in the Utah desert. During the summer of 2022, archaeologists discovered a collection of ancient footprints on a United States Air Force base in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert. They're only visible when it rains, and they fill with moisture and darken against the surrounding ground. The team first noticed a handful of the footprints while en route to a different archaeological site, and they found dozens more after sweeping the area with ground-penetrating radar, bringing the total number of footprints up to 88. While the exact age of the prints is unknown, researchers believe that they're at least 10,000 years old and possibly as much as 12,000 years old, dating back to the tail end of the last ice age. The footprints were left behind by both adults and children at a time when the area was a wetland. At one point in the distant past, the Great Salt Lake Desert was covered by a large saltwater lake. It began drying up toward the end of the Ice Age, eventually leaving behind the salt flats that are there today. During this transition, the region experienced a wet period, which would have created the perfect conditions for leaving behind footprints. According to archaeologist Darren Duke, the people who made the prints would have walked in shallow water with a layer of sand on top and mud beneath it. The mud retained the shape of people's feet, but the prints became filled with sand, causing them to blend in with their surroundings in dry weather. Discoveries like this are extremely important for helping modern humans feel connected with the past, because seeing something like a footprint helps to bring us closer to our history in a very personal way. These findings also help us to learn more about the movements of past humans as we spread throughout the globe in search of a place to call home. Where else on the planet do you think we could find more ancient footprints? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. Norway's oldest ship burial. In central Norway, there's a large grassy hill called the Herlaugshagen Burial Mound. Measuring 197 feet in diameter and 23 feet in height, it's the biggest structure of its kind in central Norway and one of the largest in the country. Most burial mounds in the region are less than 40 feet in diameter, making them a fraction of the size of the hill at Herlaugshagen. Archaeologists have long speculated about what's inside the hill, with many wondering if it contained an ancient ship. It's a logical assumption given the mound's location in the municipality of Leka, which was once situated along a centuries-old shipping route. During the summer of 2023, archaeologists found multiple rivets and wood at the site, indicating that there's most likely a ship buried there. Study leader Geir Gronsby told Live Science that the vessel appears to be in a good state of preservation, based on the condition of the rivets and wood that the team examined. Radiocarbon testing revealed that the ship was built around the year 700 AD, which means that it predates the Viking era by nearly a century. This is significant, according to Gronsby, because until now, most ship burials dated no further back than the 8th century AD. The discovery helps to fill a missing gap of knowledge among historians about what shipbuilding was like between the time of the famous Sutton Hoo burial in England during the 7th century AD and the Scandinavian traditions that came along after the recently discovered ship. Gronsby further explained that the northern location of the burial mound shows that people were sailing over large areas before the Viking Age. But without a thorough excavation, the team's knowledge of the ship and what it was used for will remain limited. Long lost suitcase of artifacts. In 2018, researchers in Israel investigated a customs letter from 1938 about a suitcase that had been left behind at the port of Haifa. They discovered that the missing suitcase contained around 140 small artifacts that were excavated in the ancient village of Shifta. The items consisted of jewelry, nails, pottery shards featuring ancient Greek and Arabic writing, pieces of glass and bone, as well as ivory and wood objects. Until taking a closer look at the letter, experts believed that the artifacts had been lost in a fire at Shifta in 1938. But the letter proved that the items had been removed from the site months before the fire, which meant that they were still out there somewhere, waiting to be rediscovered. The suitcase belonged to American archaeologist Harris Dunscombe Colt, who left it behind at Haifa in January of that year. He went on to publish research about his other excavations throughout the Negev desert, but papers about Shifta were conspicuously absent from his work. More than 80 years after the artifacts were lost and forgotten, the researchers tracked them down to a museum archive in Israel, where their importance had gone unnoticed for decades. Following their rediscovery, the ancient objects were put on display at the Hecht Museum at the University of Haifa, world's oldest known fort. In 2023, a team of Russian researchers published a study revealing that the world's oldest known fort was built around 8,000 years ago during the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age. Located along the Amur River, which runs through western Siberia, the settlement consists of two sections, Amur 1 and Amur 2. There are around 20 pit house depressions throughout the site, where people once lived in earthen dwellings surrounded by wooden palisades. Amur Fort was built by a hunter-gatherer society at a time when humans hadn't yet transitioned to permanent agricultural settlements. The discovery of its age was surprising, because until very recently, experts believed that these types of structures weren't built until people began farming as a lifestyle. They thought of hunter-gatherer societies as nomadic and basic. But after discovering the age of the site through radiocarbon dating, the team who performed the study realized that they needed to change their thinking about what these Stone Age societies were capable of. The presence of the earthen pit dwellings alone shows that hunter-gatherers built defense structures that are typically only associated with agrarian societies. Currently, nobody knows why the settlers at Amania felt the need to build the structures or why they chose that specific location. However, it seems like a desirable place for several reasons, including its ideal positioning as a lookout for enemies, as well as its proximity to the water. Speaking with Live Science, archaeologist and study co-author Tanya Schreiber said that it's also unclear whether a leader commissioned the settlement's construction or if it was a community decision. She noted that there were numerous reasons for building defensive structures, including war, securing possessions, thwarting raids, and more. The culture that built Amania Fort may forever be shrouded in mystery, but the study's findings prove that humans are still working on piecing together the story of our past. Throughout the years, we've learned a great deal about our ancient ancestors, but we still have a lot to understand about our history.
8. P47D Thunderbolt. A P47D Thunderbolt, nicknamed Dottie May, is a historic aircraft recovered from Lake Trounsee in Austria. Its tail number, 4229150, holds the distinction of being the last USAAF aircraft lost in action in the European theater during World War II. The recovery operation happened on June 13, 2005, after the plane had spent 60 years on the lakebed. The operation was carried out in secrecy by warbird recovery experts. Despite the damage caused by its ditching in the lake on VE Day, the aircraft was in surprisingly good condition. The Thunderbolt was one of the 12,602 produced during World War II. Notably, less than 1 in 1,000 of these R-2800 powered fighter bombers survive in airworthy condition today. After the recovery, the plane was carefully restored, most likely in Austria, before being moved to its permanent home in the USA. The city of Evansville, Indiana, where Republic had a plant during the war, expressed interest in displaying the plane. The story of the Dottie May is a testament to the resilience and durability of historic aircraft, and its recovery from Lake Trounsee is a significant event for the preservation of aviation history. 7. The Nuestra Señora de Detocha. The Nuestra Señora de Detocha, a Spanish galleon, is one of the most famous shipwrecks of all time. Built in Havana during 1620, it was part of a fleet that sailed from the New World across the sea to Spain. The ship was heavily loaded with treasure, including 40 tons of gold and silver, and around 70 pounds or 31.7 kilograms of Colombian emeralds. In 1622, the Detocha was hit by a hurricane, causing it to sink. Of the 265 people on board at the time, only 5 survived by clinging to the mizzenmast, the only part of the ship still above the water. The Spanish tried to recover the valuable cargo, but the hatches were locked shut, and a second hurricane destroyed the shipwreck, causing it to be lost without a trace. Over 300 years later, in 1969, the legendary deep-sea explorer Mel Fisher started a quest to find the Detocha's treasure. Despite countless challenges, including the loss of 3 crew members and a lengthy legal battle with the state of Florida, Fisher stayed determined. His team finally found silver bars in 1973, and the galleon's cannons just 2 years later. In 1985, Fisher discovered the shipwreck of the Nuestra Señora de Detocha somewhere off the Florida Keys. The cargo's value is estimated to be worth about $400 million today. It includes 24 tons of silver bullion, ingots, and coins, as well as 125 gold bars and discs, and 1,200 pounds or 544 kilograms of silverware. Other items of great historical importance were also recovered, like 20 bronze cannons, navigational instruments, and Native American artifacts. This treasure led to the Detocha being declared the most valuable shipwreck in the world by Guinness World Records back in 2014. 6. The Queseria Treasure. The Queseria Treasure is a remarkable underwater discovery that took place off the coast of Queseria, Israel. In February 2015, a scuba diver named Zvika Feyer was exploring the ocean floor when he suddenly noticed a slight glimmer in the sand. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a gold coin containing Arabic script on both sides. Feyer and his diving companions eventually found more coins, realizing that they'd stumbled upon the bounty of a shipwreck. They quickly contacted Queseria officials, who alerted the Israeli Antiquities Authority, IAA. Despite skepticism, Fayer and his team were able to convince them of the urgency of recovering the coins thanks to an impending storm. The treasure included hundreds of silver and bronze Roman coins from the mid-3rd century CE, and a hoard of silver coins from the Mamluk period. Other fascinating artifacts were also located, like a bronze figurine in the form of an eagle, several bronze bells, pottery vessels, and an iron anchor. In addition to these, a gold ring engraved with the figure of the Good Shepherd, a well-known symbol of Jesus in early Christian art, was recovered. This discovery is significant since it provides a look into the trade and commerce that went on in the region during the Roman and Mamluk periods. The Queseria Treasure is a testament to the history that lies under the sea, waiting to be discovered. It offers valuable insights into the past and is a continuous subject of study for both archaeologists and historians. 5. The San Jose Shipwreck. The San Jose Shipwreck is one of the most fascinating and valuable maritime discoveries ever. The San Jose was a Spanish galleon that sank in 1708 in the middle of a battle with the British near the coast of Colombia. It was carrying a massive amount of treasure, including gold, silver, emeralds, and jewelry, from the colonies of South America over to Spain. The estimated value of the cargo is around $17 billion as of 2023. The shipwreck has been dubbed the Holy Grail of shipwrecks, thanks to its immense wealth and historical significance. The location of the San Jose remained a mystery for centuries, until it was finally located in 2015 by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, WHOI, with a remotely operated vehicle, ROV. The ROV captured stunning photos of the wreckage, revealing the cannons, coins, ingots, and plates that survived the explosion and deep sea. The discovery was announced by the Colombian government, which claimed ownership of the wreck and all of its contents. But the claim was disputed by Spain, who argued that the San Jose was a ship of state and protected by international law. The legal battle over the treasure is still ongoing, as is the debate over the ethical and cultural implications of salvaging the shipwreck at all. The San Jose is not only a treasure trove, but also a time capsule that offers a peek into the colonial era and the War of the Spanish Succession. It's a testament to the maritime prowess, the economic ambitions, and political conflicts of the 18th century. It is also a reminder of the human cost of war and greed, since over 600 people died in the sinking of the San Jose. The San Jose Shipwreck is a unique and priceless piece of heritage that deserves respect and preservation. Do you have a favorite shipwreck? Let us know in the comments down below, and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the video so far. 4. Cronin Cheese. A Swedish warship called the Cronin sank in 1676 during a naval battle with Denmark and the Netherlands. It was one of the largest and most powerful ships during its time, capable of carrying 126 cannons and up to 800 crew members. But it also contained a surprising cargo, a tin of cheese that survived for over 300 years on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. The cheese was discovered in 2016 by a group of divers who were exploring the wreck of the Cronin, near the island of Åland. The divers were hoping to find gold or jewels, but instead, they found a tin jar buried in clay. When they brought it up to the surface, some of its contents leaked out and had a foul smell. They realized that they found a dairy product that had been preserved by the cold, dark, and low oxygen conditions of the sea. The cheese was immediately sent off to a laboratory for analysis, where researchers confirmed that it was actually a dairy product, most likely cheese or butter originally. They also tried to determine what kind of cheese it was and how it was made. The researchers said that it could have been a Roquefort-like cheese, made from sheep's milk and aged by mold. Alternatively, it could have been a hard cheese, like Parmesan or Gouda, made from cow's milk and salted for preservation. The cheese also raised several questions about the diet and culture of 17th century sailors who sailed on the Cronin. Why did they bring cheese on the ship? Was it a luxury item or a staple food? How did they store and eat it? Did they share it with other ships or keep it to themselves? The cheese is one of many fascinating artifacts that have been recovered from the Cronin, which is currently Sweden's largest underwater archaeology project. The shipwreck has yielded tens of thousands of items, like cannons, coins, weapons, tools, clothing, medicines, and human bones. The cheese is one of the most unusual and interesting finds, since it offers a look into the culinary history and preferences of the people on the Cronin. 3. The Titanic Violin. The Titanic was one of the most opulent and cutting-edge ships in history, but it also ended up being one of the most catastrophic. On April 14, 1912, the ship hit an iceberg and sank in less than 3 hours, claiming the lives of over 1,500 people. Among the victims, there were 8 musicians who played up until the very end, trying to calm passengers and crew as they faced their deaths. The leader of the band was named Wallace Hartley, a 33-year-old violinist from Lancashire, England. Hartley played in various orchestras and on other ships before joining the Titanic. He was engaged to a woman named Maria Robinson, whom he planned to marry after returning from the voyage. He brought a violin with him that she'd given him as an engagement present, with an inscription, "For Wallace, on the occasion of our engagement, from Maria." Hartley and the other musicians were not employed by the company that owned the Titanic, but by a music agency that supplied bands. They were considered second-class passengers with their own cabins on the ship. They played at different times and locations during the journey, entertaining the first and second-class passengers with a repertoire of popular tunes. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, Hartley and his band weren't on duty, but they quickly gathered on deck with their instruments. They played cheerful and lively music to prevent panic. They moved from the boat deck to the first-class lounge and then back to the deck as the ship started to tilt. They reportedly played their last song, "Nearer, My God, to Thee," as the Titanic plunged into the water. None of the musicians survived, but their bravery was widely praised and remembered. Hartley's body was recovered by a rescue ship 10 days after the disaster. He was still wearing his life jacket and holding on tightly to his violin case, which was strapped to his body. The violin was returned to Maria, who never married and kept it until her death in 1939. The violin passed through several hands until it was rediscovered in 2006 by an English auction. After extensive research and testing, it was confirmed to be Hartley's violin from the Titanic. It was displayed in multiple museums and exhibitions before being sold in 2013 for $1.7 million. The Titanic violin is more than just an instrument. It's a symbol of courage and sacrifice in the face of tragedy. It represents Hartley and his bandmates, who chose to play until the end, giving comfort and hope to those who needed it most. 2. The Kursk Disaster. On August 12, 2000, a Russian nuclear submarine sank to the bottom of the Barents Sea. It was later discovered that all 118 crew members were dead. The disaster's exact origin is still a mystery. A few days before, on August 10, 2000, the Kursk sailed out of port. To perform military maneuvers, Russian aircraft, ships, and submarines gather in the Barents Sea above the Arctic Circle. Before firing a practice torpedo on August 12th, Kursk had 2 explosions in its front hull. As a result, the submarine dove down toward the ocean floor. The Kursk was around 500 feet long, or 150 meters, and carried 24,000 tons of weight. It also had 2 nuclear reactors. This was the biggest attack submarine in the world, over 3 times bigger than the largest submarines in the US Navy. Several countries volunteered to help in the rescue operation, since it was uncertain what would become of the 118 Russian crew members who were on the Kursk. But the Russian government declined every offer. A week later, divers eventually discovered no evidence of life. Vladimir Putin gave in to the intense pressure and agreed to raise the submarine from the ocean floor for examination. despite the fact that no ship or item of such scale had ever been brought up from the ocean's depths before. 1. Fort Drum. An abandoned military outpost called Fort Drum, or El Fraile Island, resembles a massive, blocky battleship. It's located just off the coast of the Philippines and still has its rusted weapons in position. During the Spanish-American War, the U.S. had to strengthen its fortifications in its recently conquered areas, including Manila Bay. For this reason, they built a permanent defense base on El Fraile Island, instead of stationing expensive naval forces in the port. The island was leveled for construction, rebuilt almost entirely from scratch with reinforced concrete, and given the form of a huge warship. 2 massive artillery batteries were installed to complete the appearance. On the new island, a wooden barracks was constructed, but it was later taken down so that the swiveling weapons could move more freely. The fake ship was very defendable and had an intimidating silhouette to potential enemies. Sadly, the base was captured by Japan in World War II, and they held it until 1945 when the Allies went to reclaim Manila. The Americans poured oil and gasoline into the base and set it on fire, eradicating the last of the enemy soldiers and igniting flames that raged within the facility for days on end. This was done after the men were secured outside the fort. The war-torn Fort Drum was abandoned once Manila was retaken, leaving the burnt-out fortress to rot along with its weapons.
Number 5. Mutsu. The salvage of a Japanese battleship called the Mutsu, a vessel steeped in both historical significance and tragedy, is a memorable chapter in maritime history. The Mutsu, a Nagato-class battleship, met its catastrophic end in 1943, leading to a prolonged salvage operation that spanned across several decades. The demise of the Mutsu was both sudden and dramatic. On June 8, 1943, an internal explosion, the cause of which remains an intense subject of debate, ripped through the ship, causing it to sink into the waters of Hiroshima Bay. This tragic event necessitated a complex salvage operation, initiated mainly to recover bodies and assess the possibility of raising the ship from the watery depths. Initial salvage efforts were marked by uncertainty. Divers, after familiarizing themselves on the Mutsu's sister ship, the Nagato, began a series of risky underwater missions to inspect the state of the wreck. One of these missions, involving a Nishimura-type submersible, almost ended in tragedy when the vessel became snagged on the side of the wreck, trapping its crew underwater for over 2 hours with a limited supply of oxygen. These hazards underscored the challenges involved in similar salvage operations. Despite initial considerations to raise and rebuild the Mutsu, the Japanese Navy eventually decided that such a task was infeasible. On September 1, 1943, the Mutsu was formally removed from the Navy list. But the ship still held quite a bit of value. In July 1944, during Operation Take, or Bamboo, 580 tons of fuel were removed from the wreck, a significant achievement considering Japan's acute oil shortage during World War II. After the war was over, the United States Navy inspected the wreck in 1947, and in the early 1950s, the U.S. Occupation Administration returned the wreckage to the Japanese government, paving the way for future salvage operations. These efforts culminated in notable recoveries, like the ship's chrysanthemum crest and a 5.5-inch casemate gun in 1963. The most extensive salvage operations were overseen by the Fukuda Salvage Company, which acquired the rights to the wreck in 1970. Their efforts, which included the recovery of the No. 4 turret, continued until 1978, ultimately recovering about 75% of the total ship. But a significant portion of the Mutsu still remains underwater to this day, including a 35-meter section encompassing the bridge structure and the No. 1 turret. The Mutsu's legacy is preserved through multiple artifacts displayed across Japan. The Mutsu Memorial Museum in Towacho is home to many of these pieces, while the fully restored No. 4 turret is exhibited at the former Naval Academy in Etajima. Parts of the ship, including a 16-inch gun and a propeller, are displayed at the Yamato Museum in Kure, and other components are showcased at the Museum of Maritime Science in Tokyo and the Yasukuni Museum. But some artifacts, like a rudder and a propeller shaft once displayed at the Arashiyama Art Museum, have since disappeared. Number 4. Wida Galley. The Wida Galley, often referred to as the Wida, holds a significant place in maritime history as a ship that passed around through multiple roles, from a passenger and cargo vessel to a slave ship, and finally as a notorious pirate ship during the golden age of piracy. Launched in the later half of the 17th century, the Wida was originally built to be used in the triangle trade, which involved the exchange of goods and enslaved people between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. But the ship's journey took a dramatic turn when she was captured by the infamous pirate Captain Samuel Black Sam Bellamy on her maiden voyage. Bellamy, one of the most well-known pirates of his time, commandeered the Wida and sailed her along the coast of the American colonies. In this period, the Wida became a major symbol of piracy, capturing other ships and steadily accumulating wealth. Tragically, on April 26, 1717, a violent storm hit, and the Wida was wrecked off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. This catastrophic event led to the loss of many of her crew, with only 9 survivors, 2 of whom were later freed since they'd been forced into a life of piracy, while 6 were hanged, and 1 Indian crewman was eventually sold into slavery. The Wida and her treasure remained a legend for over 2.5 centuries, evading discovery for years until 1984. Barry Clifford, an underwater explorer, spotted the wreck off Cape Cod's coast, buried under a fairly shallow layer of water and sand. The discovery was huge, with the Wida Galley being the only fully authenticated pirate shipwreck from the golden age of piracy. The verification of the ship's identity was solidified with the finding of the ship's bell in 1985. The medal was inscribed with "The Wida Galley 1716" and a small brass placard also found in 2013. The site of the Wida's wreck has since been a focus of underwater archaeology. Over 200,000 artifacts have been discovered, offering invaluable insights into the life and times of the golden age of piracy. One of the most important finds was the belongings of the youngest known member of the crew, a boy named John King, aged only about 10 or 11. King insisted on joining Bellamy's crew, and artifacts like a child-sized shoe and a silk stocking found in the wreck align with historical accounts of his clothing. Today, the Wida story continues to captivate audiences. Artifacts recovered from the wreck are displayed proudly at the Wida Pirate Museum in West Yarmouth, Massachusetts, and at Real Pirates in Salem, Massachusetts. The Wida Sea Lab and Learning Center, opened by Clifford in Provincetown, Massachusetts, also contributes to the ongoing exploration and education surrounding this unique and historic vessel. Before we continue, if you're joining us for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button to unlock more incredible videos. And don't keep your thoughts all to yourself. Drop a comment down below and tell us what content you want to see next. Number 3. George M. Humphrey. The recovery of the George M. Humphrey in 1944 is a testament to human ingenuity and determination. This crucial operation, led by Captain John Rowan, a Norwegian immigrant and experienced Great Lakes sailor, is a remarkable page in the history book of maritime salvage. The George M. Humphrey, a 600-foot freighter, sank in the Straits of Mackinac after hitting another vessel, the DM Clemson, in heavy fog on June 15, 1943. The freighter, owned by the Kinsman Transit Company and run by GM and H.G. Steinbrenner, settled in 77 feet of water, posing a significant hazard to navigation objectives. This event marked the first sinking of a 600-footer in Great Lakes history. The salvage was deemed impossible by many experts, but Captain Rowan's innovative approach challenged this idea. He partially filled the ship's ballast tanks up with air, making the vessel buoyant enough to be lifted and moved to shallow waters by a smaller surface vessel. This method was unconventional, but oddly, highly effective. The operation first started off in October 1944 during challenging weather conditions and fluctuating water levels in the Great Lakes. Divers played an important role, removing hatch covers and equipment from the Humphrey, while Rowan's barges, Maitland and Industry, worked tirelessly to lift the 13,992 tons of iron ore the Humphrey carried. This phase was critical in reducing the ship's overall weight and making it more manageable to lift. In May 1945, Rowan and his crew further intensified their efforts. Divers attached sheaves to the Humphrey's gunwale bars, and a steam hammer was used underwater to facilitate this process. A complex system of pulleys and cables was created to evenly distribute the lifting force needed for the salvage operation. The precision and coordination of these efforts were paramount. An essential aspect of the operation was making the Humphrey's water ballast tanks airtight. Divers used quick-sealing cement to cover up any splits or seams, ensuring the tanks could be effectively filled with air to help with buoyancy. This meticulous and slow task was crucial for the ship's eventual resurfacing. The recovery involved several stages of lifting and towing, with Rowan's barges being a huge help. The Maitland, for example, used its own ballast tanks and lifting cables to maneuver the Humphrey. Innovative techniques like dividing the barge's ballast tanks and adjusting their air and water content were utilized to balance the lifting power needed for the salvage. The operation was not without its challenges, though. At one point, the Humphrey almost capsized thanks to an imbalance, but quick thinking and a well-paced shotgun blast to an airline by a crane operator ultimately saved the day. Before they knew it, the George M. Humphrey was raised and towed across Lake Michigan to Sturgeon Bay, where it was greeted by thousands of excited spectators. The salvage was an expensive endeavor, with Rowan investing about $250,000 into the operation. Despite the financial risks and the physical challenges, the successful recovery of the Humphrey was a massive achievement for Captain Rowan and his crew, showcasing their resourcefulness and engineering abilities. Number 2. MV Tricolor. The MV Tricolor, a Norwegian-flagged vehicle carrier, became well known for its involvement in 3 separate collisions within a 2-week time span in the English Channel, one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Officially launched in 1987 as Nosak Sun, the 50,000-ton ship met its fate in December 2002. On December 14, 2002, the Tricolor was traveling from Zeebrugge, Belgium to Southampton, UK, with nearly 3,000 new cars. In the early hours of the morning, it collided with the Kariba, a Bahamian-flagged container ship from 1982. While the Kariba tracked on, the Tricolor sank 17 nautical miles north of the French coast in the English Channel. The sinking happened within the French exclusive economic zone near Dunkirk Harbor, France's most northern seaport. Remarkably, there were no deaths, but the ship ended up submerged on one of its sides in 30-meter deep water. The location of the sunken Tricolor posed a major hazard to navigation, since it laid where 2 lanes of traffic separation scheme, or TSS, of the English Channel and the southern part of the North Sea merged together. Considering the area's heavy traffic, the French authorities quickly ordered the wreck's removal thanks to its danger it presented to shipping and the sea's environment. Despite major efforts to mark and guard the wreck, 2 more collisions happened shortly after its sinking. The Dutch vessel Nicola hit the Tricolor the following night, despite several radio warnings, guard ships, and lighted buoys. A more severe incident took place on January 1, 2003, when the Turkish-registered fuel carrier Vicky hit the wreck but was later freed by the rising tide. These incidents prompted the International Association of Marine Aids to Navigation and Lighthouse Authorities, or the IALA, to define the emergency wreck buoy for marking recent wrecks before permanent buoyage and chart updates were made. The salvage operation for the Tricolor, led by the Dutch company Smit International, began in July 2003 and finished up on October 27, 2004. The consortium used a carbide-encrusted cutting cable to slice the wreckage up into 9 sections, each weighing about 3,000 tons. The Dutch company CT Systems, working together with Thales Navigation, managed the navigational aspects, utilizing advanced positioning equipment and side-scan sonar for systematic debris search and recovery efforts. The cargo of 2,871 new cars, including luxury brands like BMW, Volvo, and Saab, was removed and recycled for scrap metal. Most oil from the ship's tanks was extracted shortly after sinking, but the salvage operation ended in a 540-ton oil spill. The MV Tricolor's story is a grim reminder of the complexities and dangers involved in maritime navigation and the critical importance of effective salvage operations in minimizing environmental and navigational risks. Number 1. Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia disaster, which took place on January 13, 2012, marked one of the most significant maritime incidents in recent history. The 8-year-old cruise ship, operated through Costa Cruises, a subsidiary of Carnival Corporation, deviated from its planned route near Tuscany. The ship hit a rock formation, causing it to tilt and partially sink on an underwater ledge. The incident led to the loss of 33 lives, 27 passengers, 5 crew members, and a member from the salvage team. The subsequent investigation centered mainly on the crew's procedures and the actions taken by Captain Francesco Schettino, who was found guilty of manslaughter for abandoning the ship with 300 passengers still on board. Most of the remaining passengers were later rescued by helicopters or motorboats in the vicinity. Schettino was sentenced to serve 16 years in prison. Costa Cruises faced criticism but received no criminal charges. The Costa Concordia was deemed a constructive total loss. Its salvage operation, initiated on September 16, 2013, and finished by October 27, 2014, was one of the largest in history. The parbuckle method was used to set the ship upright with an underwater cradle. In July 2014, the ship was refloated using a few sponsons welded to her sides and towed to Genoa for scrapping, which was concluded in July 2017. The wreck of the Costa Concordia became a target for looters and souvenir hunters, leading to the theft of many items, including the ship's bell and pieces of artwork. Authorities imposed strict controls around the wreck to stop further intrusions and protect the environment. Poor weather conditions raised concerns about possible oil spills, prompting the deployment of protective measures like floating oil barriers. The environmental impact was a huge concern, particularly thanks to the location of the wreck within the Pelago Sanctuary for Mediterranean marine mammals, a scuba diving destination, and vital ecosystem. Measures were taken to stop pollution and protect maritime life, including relocating a population of giant fan mussels. The salvage process involved many intricate steps, like securing the wreck, installing sponsons, and refloating the ship. The operation necessitated advanced navigation and engineering techniques, including the use of a carbide-encrusted cutting cable to slice the wreck into movable sections. Throughout the operation, there was constant monitoring for any potential environmental hazards. The offloading of fuel from the ship was a critical component, undertaken using the hot tapping technique. The operation's last phase involved towing the refloated Costa Concordia to an Italian port for recycling. What other events would you like us to make videos about? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.